everyone, and welcome to today's episode. So, I'm doing something a little bit different today, and I'm about to chat with Australian author Jennifer Mistmorgan. And she's written this lovely book, These Long Shadows. And I recorded a solo episode for this one. It's episode 15 that you'll be able to find if you look it up. And so, with the interview, we're going to do a deeper dive into some of the questions that I had on the story, and I'm really looking forward to chatting with Jennifer. So if you haven't listened to episode 15 and want to catch up on that first, please pause and go back and do that. Otherwise, stay tuned, and here's our interview with Jennifer. So welcome, Jennifer Mistmorgan. I'm so glad you're here today.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm so glad you're here. So first of all, we're going to start with your bio, which I will read now.
Okay.
So here we go. Award-winning Australian author Jennifer Mistmorgan sometimes feels like she was born in the wrong era. So she writes historical fiction set in the 1940s against the backdrop of World War II and its aftermath. She infuses her sweet romances with wartime drama, imperfect faith, and a dash of intrigue. Jennifer lives in Canberra, Australia, with her family and a wonky-eared West Highland Terrier. So it's so good to have another Aussie on the show. So thank you for being here. And so for my icebreaker questions, my first question for you is, have you visited England?
I have visited England. London is one of my favorite places in the whole world.
Yeah.
It's the city where my heart goes. I often wish I was there when I see it on television. All I want to do is be there. My family are very used to me by now going. So yes, I have been a couple of times now, and
Yeah.
I love it to
And do you
bits.
have English ancestry as well?
Oh, only so much as the average or the average white Australian, I suppose,
Yeah.
has English ancestry.
Yeah.
Um, I am, yeah, yeah. That,
I
but
have some English. I'm more Scottish than English, though. But
yeah.
anyway, so let's go back to England. So, if you'd like to share with us a fun fact about England from the World War II era that you've discovered during your research.
If there really were a lot of fun facts, so to speak, it was a difficult time. Um, I think I think my favorite fact about wartime England is sort of wartime and post-war England, and that
Yeah.
is that rationing of food in England actually got worse after the war. So a lot of people, uh, when they think about rationing and World War II, that's rationing's the first thing they think of. They think of um, you know terrible
Yeah.
meals and Wilton pie and make do with what you've got sort of thing. But actually it got worse after the war. And I think that's really interesting. And I think it's really, like, I suppose, upsetting. Like, can you imagine you've won
Yeah.
the war and then suddenly you don't get all the things back on the shelves that you're inspecting. In fact, now you can't even buy bread without the ration. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I find
It's
those things interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard to imagine. I mean, we remember during the pandemic, the toilet paper fiasco, where you could not buy toilet paper anywhere, and people would go to the supermarket and stand outside and wait for it to open to get toilet paper. And that was just one thing. We had food and everything else, but I just can't imagine living life where, particularly for the working class, it would have been so tough
Yeah.
trying to get hold of just the necessities of life.
How tired you must have been, because
Yes.
if you're in many cities around England, but to a large extent London, as a woman and as a homemaker, you're now not only caring for your family, you are now working, probably. You're
Yeah.
probably in charge of doing all the cooking, and that means all the lining up and all the shopping, and probably doesn't taste very good when you cook it because you don't have the right ingredients.
Yeah.
And then you're
Yeah.
up all night because planes are overhead dropping
Yeah.
bombs.
Yeah. And I
That's awesome.
mean, yeah, we take for granted our washing machine. We put laundry in a washing machine, and if you've got a dryer, you move it to the dryer. And it was an all-day event doing the laundry back then. So
Yes. When I say I feel like I was born in the wrong era, I am very happy with some of the modern conveniences I have in my life right now.
absolutely, I completely agree with you on that. So before we go any further, we're talking about These Long Shadows, the third book in Jennifer's series. So please tell us about your book in your own words.
These Long Shadows is a love story. It's a marriage of convenience love
Yeah.
story between two people who have met and married during the war, thinking that that is going to uh, be a solution to a lot of problems that they have, and having to deal with the fact that it didn't turn and life doesn't turn out the way you expect it's going to turn out. So they're dealing with the consequences, I suppose, of their wartime decisions.
Yeah.
Um, I think that probably sets it up for
Definitely. And
people.
I did go into that in the earlier episode that I've mentioned. I talked about some of the reasons as to why they got married. And
Yeah.
interesting that we go there. So we'll
Mm.
be talking about that a bit more in a minute. But my first question for
Yeah.
you is about Jonty and Katie. So
Yeah.
they were both raised in what we'd really call a domestic violence situation with 21st century language.
Mm.
Although back then, I don't think it would have necessarily it would have been seen as being hard and difficult, but not necessarily domestic violence. That's really a 21st century term. And Jonty's uncle and Katie's father both had very problematic relationships with alcohol. And as we said, the world was different back then. London in 1945 was dealing with a lot of economic pain, social pain, a lot of loss and grief. So, how did the alcoholism in Jonty's and Katie's families when they were growing up in their early years impact their lives as adults?
I think that's such a good question because it tugs at a few of the things that make them who they are as characters. So I don't think it's spoiling much to say the father figures in their lives have different, not very good, both of them necessarily
Yeah,
attitudes towards alcohol. I think John Hughes is more a case of um, really he it's a case of neglect and abuse. Like even I think uh, back then that probably would have been acknowledged. But you're
yeah,
right. You're right. We use a whole set of different sort of language and stuff today. Um, and and so I suppose with Jonty, for some reason, when I was writing Heart in the Clouds and when I thought up Jonty, I just knew that he was a teetotaler. So I just knew that he didn't touch a drop of alcohol. And so I wanted to know, which became quite important for that book, but I wanted to know why when I started to dig deeper into him. And it's because he is a reaction to how he
yeah,
was raised. And I think that for Katie, it's slightly different. So for Katie, drinking is perhaps one of the many suite of behaviors that makes her father unpredictable.
mm,
And I think that you can probably say that that unpredictability is what, maybe shaped some of the decisions that got her into the difficult situations that she's been in her life. And I also think that it's that unpredictability of her father that has drawn her to Jonty, because ultimately he is a very stable, very loyal force.
yeah.
So I think for both of them, even though it's different situations, they are both reacting um, they're reacting to father figures in their lives.
Yeah.
Mm.
Definitely, because
Yeah.
I mean, Jonty was so solid and so stable, and with her father, and I don't think this is a spoiler to mention, basically, when he turned up, the whole house walks on eggshells.
Yeah.
They're like, we don't know what mood he's going to be in, we don't know what's going to happen. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's a very difficult environment that they grew up in.
Yeah.
Yes. So let's talk about Heart in the Clouds because that's where the backstory happens. for how Katie ends up in the family way. So she
Yeah.
was a very naive 19-year-old and
Yeah.
totally unaware that some of the men on the Air Force Base, and not Jonty, but some of the others, had a thing going, a betting thing called the Sweetheart Stakes. And so one of
Mm.
the rogues who got involved in this was the person that got Katie into trouble. And so Jonty basically steps in and offers to marry Katie, even though he's not responsible for Katie being in the situation she's in. So
Yeah.
why did Jonty get involved with Katie? And was it an unrequited love situation back then at the RAF base, or was it something else that motivated him? So if we can sort of go there without giving away spoilers, which is a
Yeah.
bit tricky.
Yeah. Well, I suppose if you read the prologue of These Long Shadows, you'll very quickly see that he is the one who proposes to her in the first in the prologue.
Yeah.
So I think that what Jonty sees in Katie is a friendship. They have a friendship. They've worked together on this airfield in the armory, and I'm not sure that it's this unrequited romantic love necessarily. I mean, but it could be. And I think what he is attracted to is the fact, like he is not a physically attractive man. I think he would like to be. Um, and he didn't have a great family, but he wants a good family. And so I think that he also knows that he's likely to die during the war, statistically speaking. And so I think he's like, well, this solves your problem, and it could actually be a really good thing. Um, so I think it's more friendship, and certainly that's why they think they can make it work again after the war. That's where they decide to start again is, well, we were friends once, we could probably be friends again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my read a bit to the story. So the
Yeah.
reader always adds their bit to the story. And
Yeah.
from thinking back to Heart in the Clouds, because Katie is in the story, although she's not necessarily the most likable character in the story, but she
Yeah.
was interesting.
Yeah.
And there was stuff happening behind the scenes that wasn't on stage. So my take was that Jonty was not really feeling like he was going to marry the woman of his dreams because of the scarring, because of the disfigurement, and people being so socially conscious that he was not going to be able to have the life that he otherwise would have had if he didn't have the scarring. Therefore, Katie was a very attractive proposition for that reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that that's fair to say. She is quite good looking. That's
Yes.
sort of that was that was sort of why I invented her, in a sense, to tell you the truth, for Heart in the Clouds. I didn't know this was I was going to write this story, and she was just a convenient, attractive person
Yeah.
to create an obstacle. But yeah, I think that rings
Yeah.
true.
And I love how those characters come along and they just create a life of their own. Like they were never meant to be anything, but they come on the stage and they do their thing. And it's like, okay, you do want to have your own story one day, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll have to work out how to make that happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And there was a lot of light and fun stuff happening in the story. And there were things happening with her dressmaking and things like that. And
Yeah.
there were also some pretty heavy themes around grief and loss that were drawn out in the story and
Mm.
explored in more detail. And it's grief that's really torn apart Katie's and Jonty's very, very fragile marriage. And I'd even go as far as saying fragile friendship within their marriage, because I mean, a strong marriage is always founded on friendship as well
Mm.
as romantic love.
Mm.
And I think that whole foundation was very shaky from the get go for all the reasons that we've talked about from their past and all
Mm.
their emotional baggage.
Mm.
So at the start of the story, how are Katie and Jonty coping with the devastating loss of their very young baby girl? It's just a heartbreaking, awful situation to deal with.
Yeah. Well, I think that they how they I think anyone who has experienced grief, and particularly grief of a child, will understand the sort of long-term, maybe cyclical, maybe even sometimes random nature of the grief. It seems to go away, it comes back, it it's
Yeah.
not this sort of nice little linear journey out of grief. And so I think we meet them really, I think it's just under 2 years since their baby has passed away, and they've been estranged.
Yeah.
And so the grief has sort of blown them apart at its very height, and they've journeyed through it a little bit, and now they're ready to move on from the they're ready to move on to the next part of the grieving and healing process. So I think for Katie, she has, you can almost say she has been paralyzed for the last couple of years, without Jonty, because she sort of sent him away,
Yeah.
pushed him away as part of her grief. But also she doesn't know how to move on because she's been so stuck, and so paralyzed. And I think Jonty, a little like I think it's a similar thing, but he hasn't had the same grief that she has had. Not just because the baby as such wasn't his, because I think he had the same sort of fatherly feelings as if the child was his, but he wasn't present for a lot of the a lot of the parenting and the pregnancy journey that Katie had, because of the nature of a wartime marriage and whatnot. So
Yeah.
they're both ready for something new. They're both ready to
Definitely.
deal with it, but they at the beginning of the story, I don't think either of them know how, just that they want to.
Yeah. And his grief is interesting because he genuinely thought, because he was a rear gunner in the part of the plane where you were most likely to die,
Yep.
he really thought that he was not going to see the end of the war,
Yep.
and that he'd be giving her a war widow pension, and that his life was going to be over. He'd already had a very close brush with death previously, which I'm not going to talk about because that spoils Heart in the Clouds. But he's gone through that and got to the end of the war, and it's like, well, what do I do now, God? Because I'm still here.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think there's probably something a lot. I mean, Jonty's has, quite a few big other things that he's dealing with as well. But, for a lot of people, life did sort of pause. In many ways, life also went on. But,
Yeah.
there is a sort of sense of, well, after the war, we have to wait till after the war to do this, or to do that, or to get married, or whatever. And so I think that, yeah, there is that sort of, oh, now what kind of
Yeah.
thing. Okay, now what? Well, I am married. There's that.
Yeah.
How can we make the best of this? And I think that is definitely who Jonty is. He is adorable, my favorite
Yeah.
hero. He is steadfast and kind and loving and protective, not in that domineering sort of way, but I think steadfast is probably how you would describe it. And I think her mum realizes that. She says, well, you've married a good man, Katie, and being married to a good man can see you through a lot of things in this life. And so I think that, yeah, he's ready to move on, but he's
Yeah.
maybe just doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. And I mean, he hasn't got any family to guide him. So, I mean, when the story starts, they end up
Yep.
living with her family. So he's got that because he was an orphan, and then his uncle's difficult relationship. So he had all those issues to contend with as well.
He's got
Yes.
literally nothing, like
Yeah.
in the sense he is just demobilized from the Air Force, and then he literally has to give back his uniform and be issued with a whole new set of clothes and then clothing coupons to buy more. And if they don't have a house because there's a housing shortage, and like literally nothing. So it's really about rebuilding not just who they are together, but whole lives, you know?
Yeah, from ground zero for
Yeah.
sure with London. It was really, I hadn't really thought about how hard life was in 1945 in London. That your book definitely gave me an education on what was really going on and how tough it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners about the story that we haven't covered?
It's the third in a series. Definitely you get a richer experience of the side characters in the book if you read the other books in the series, Heart in the Cloud and the
Yeah,
Clouds and the Mapmaker's Secret. But don't let that deter you. Like even if you are a like dedicated series reader, if you just like the sound of this book, there's enough. It can stand alone, and that's how I designed it to sort of be read as a standalone. So definitely, if you're a series reader, start from the beginning. But if you don't mind jumping in as it'll work as a standalone.
definitely. And there's nothing in the book. So we actually meet the characters from the Mapmaker Secret as well. So we see the two couples from the earlier books, but there's actually nothing in this story that really spoils the earlier books if you want to go back and read those. So I read books out of order, but I would read your series in order. And I have read it in order as well. So finally, Narelle does something good and reads in order.
Well, you
I
didn't
don't,
have any choice, in fairness.
True, I kept buying paperbacks and reading them as a good reader, one after the other. Okay, so speaking about paperbacks, where can readers find your book?
You can find it at all most of the usual bookish places. So it's available, of course, at Amazon. It's available at the usual digital bookstores. You can also get it at Barnes and Noble and at Koorong in Australia. And if you like signed copies, also ebooks, you can buy it from my website, which is jennifermistmorgan.com.
Excellent. And I'm thinking, I mean, do we have an audiobook out in these? It's a paperback and ebook. Are you thinking about doing an audiobook?
I am thinking about doing an audiobook. I'll start with Heart in the Clouds.
Yeah.
I just have some experience as an audio narrator, so I'd like to do it myself, but I don't have a lot of time. So that's what's holding me up on that front.
Oh, I can totally relate to not having a lot of time, but I would love to hear you narrating your own books. I've been to one of Jennifer's, I think it was the Heart in the Clouds launch, and I also went to a dinner when she was launching the Mapmaker's Secret, and she read an excerpt. So if you go check out her social media and find her reading, she has a lovely reading voice for the books. So the narration would be really fun when you get around to doing it.
Yeah.
Okay, so where can readers find you on the socials? Whereabouts are you more often than not? Is it
I'm
Instagram?
yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. I do dabble in Facebook and in Pinterest. I'm also on Substack, and so that's what I'm uh, investing a lot of energy in at the moment is Substack because I really like that platform. Um, and online as well. I do have a newsletter at my website, and that's probably the best way to like if you're interested in ongoing updates and whatnot. Probably email is the best way to hang out with me.
Excellent. Newsletters from authors are always so much fun. And Fangirling with Narelle is also on Substack. So if you go
Yes.
on there, you'll find Fangirling as well as finding Jennifer Miss Morgan's Substack as well. So I'm really looking forward to reading more World War II books from you. So do you have anything in the pipeline, or can you let us know about a couple of other World War II related stories that you've got out there?
Well, probably the next thing coming up is I'm going to do a contemporary romance with a historical mystery as a serialized release. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be using Substack to do that. So if people are interested in Canberra, which is the city in which Narelle and I live,
Yes.
and they're interested in it's a contemporary romance, but people digging into the past. So um, that's coming up towards the end of the year. That's probably the main thing. It's a World War II mystery, but sort of told from the perspective of modern day characters.
That
How's that
sounds like
sound?
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. Well, I write contemporary romance and I talk a lot about contemporary romance on the podcast and YouTube show here. So that's
Yeah.
wonderful to hear. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been so lovely.
It's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for joining me today for my interview with the delightful Jennifer Mistmorgan. So, as always, if you've liked this episode, don't forget that you can subscribe at your favorite podcasting app or subscribe at YouTube so that you won't miss an episode. And you can also, if you're listening on the podcast, you can send me a text via the link in the show notes. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget that you can leave a comment and let us know what you think about the episode. And Jennifer might be able to come back in the next couple of weeks. And if you leave a comment for her, she might be able to come back and check and reply as well, which would be really fun. So thanks again for tuning in today. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend if you've enjoyed listening, particularly a friend who would enjoy reading World War II romance or you think would enjoy reading Jennifer Mistmorgan's books. And I'll see you next time.